Good morning, Year 5, and welcome to your poetry lesson for week 3. Last week, we experimented with using the 5 senses to create imagery in your poems. And this week, we are continuing with that same idea, the concept of creating an image in a poem, but this time we're going to be using similes, which you are already very, very familiar with, especially after our work with narrative writing in term 1. So similes can also be used extremely effectively to create images in poems, not just in narrative writing. So similes are also a poetic device. So our learning intention today is to understand the use of similes in poetry and to be able to write a poem using similes. At the end of this lesson, hopefully you can say that I can write a poem using similes to create imagery and engage the reader. So let's remind ourselves what similes are. Well, they are words like or as you can see here on your screen, using the words like or as to compare two things that actually are not alike. This poetic device can create a picture in the reader's mind which instantly communicates what the writer is trying to describe. So a poem with a simile can also make it more interesting and entertaining. And that's what you're going to be trying to do today or beginning to experiment with. You're going to be using similes to make your writing sound interesting and entertaining. Here is an example of a poem using similes. Before the storm. The air was heavy like a wet towel that needed to be wrung out, and the thunderheads began to rumble like an angry volcano. The wind tied up in fury like a swarm of locusts suddenly taking flight. And then the heavens opened and drenched the thirsty earth. By Kelly Roper. I'm wondering if you can guess why I have chosen to highlight in 2 colors. Well, firstly, the phrases highlighted in yellow, you can quickly see that they all have the word like in them. So that is the simile. You can see that there are 3 similes in this poem. And the words highlighted in pink are the object or the noun in the sentence. The nouns in the poem that the poet has described using the simile. So if you like, they go hand in hand, they're partners. So air and like a wet towel go together. The poet has used the simile, like a wet towel, to describe the air. Thunderheads, the poet has used like an angry volcano to describe the thunderheads. And similarly, the poet has used the simile, like a swarm of locusts, to describe the wind. And hopefully you'll notice, you might want to even pause this and read this poem again to yourself to notice and think about the images that those similes conjure up in your mind's eye as you are reading. Certainly better than writing, the air was heavy. The thunderheads began to rumble. The wind was tied up in fury. So you can, when you think of it that way, really understand how the simile adds impact and interest. Here's another example. Mum's embrace. My mum is like a cloud, comfortable and strong. I am like a raindrop. She keeps me safe and sound. When I am fully formed, she'll let me go, dropping into the world like a raindrop to the ground. And you can pause and take your time to check out the highlighting and the pairs, the partners of the noun and the similes in this poem. Like stars in the sky, you'll notice I haven't highlighted anything. So as you're listening to this poem, try and think about where the simile is. Friends are like the stars in the sky, always there even when you can't see them. They shine brightly in dark times, guiding me as the North Star does for travelers. In daylight, they blend in, a natural part of my everyday. By Michelle Meelan. So you might have noticed there is actually only one simile in this poem, like the stars, and the noun being described, friends. So friends are like the stars in the sky. So a poem doesn't have to be absolutely riddled with similes. As you can see here, there's only that one to help create that initial image as you begin reading it. Here's Halloween cat that you actually had in your quiz. And the reason I'm sharing this one with you is that you will see this is a great example of how a simile can be used, not using the word like, but using the word as instead. And as you were asked in your comprehension exercise, you'll see in verse 3, there are 2 examples of this, and I've written them out to the side. Ears pointy sharp as a witch's hat, fur deep and dark as the cave of a bat. So the word like is not used in this instance, but the word as is instead. So both are examples of similes. Sadness. Sadness is as bleak as the sky when it's cloudy and grey, as rough as the sea on a windy day, as tough as the skin on an elephant's trunk, as stinky as the smell of an angry skunk, as dark as the sky on a starless night, and it stings just as much as an animal's bite. This is a really great example to show how the simile is at the beginning of every sentence, as bleak as rough as tough as stinky as dark as. And again, the noun, the thing that's being described, you can see in the pink highlight. So this is another good example of how we are using the as word to form the simile as opposed to like. Okay, so simile poems. Their purpose, well, we are going to describe a person through comparisons, and some comparisons might include maybe objects, animals, events, or other people. And the structure today that we're going to think about, well, it's going to contain several lines, and each line is a simile which compares the person to something else and explains the comparison. When you think about the rhythm, it doesn't usually have to follow a rhythmic pattern, a simile poem. You can attempt to do so if you wish, if you want to add that extra layer of complexity, but that's up to you. And in the same way, rhyming. You don't have to rhyme. Our focus today is not on rhyme. Again, we are coming to that in a later lesson, but today your sole focus is using similes. Again, if you want to extend yourself, you're welcome to attempt to make it rhyme. So let's have a look at an example. This example is a simile poem about a big brother. He is like a surf lifesaver, continually watching over me. He is as strong as an ox, lifting me high on his shoulders. He is like a rainbow, making rainy days seem sunny and bright. He is as funny as a clown, always making me laugh out loud. He is like a suit of armor, protecting me from life's troubles. He is as precious as gold, my one and only sibling. He is my big brother. Oh, that's beautiful. I wonder if my son feels that way about his older brother. Some days yes, and perhaps some days no. What I'd love you to notice is the pattern here. Lines 1, 3, and 5 use like. He is like a. And lines 2, 4, and 6 use he is as strong as. So we're going to practice using both the like and the as today. So your job today, your task is to write a simile poem. Step 1, you're going to choose a person. It could be your sibling or soccer coach, mom, dad, auntie, whatever, whoever you decide. Choose a person you know well to describe in your simile poem. And then step 2, brainstorm the things that remind you of your person. So try to include a variety of comparisons, objects, animals, people. Go back to the example I just showed you if you need to get some more ideas. Step 3, write your simile poem using the example structure provided, which is this. So you'll see this is the beginning of the poem that I just read you before. Each line, that 1, line 3, line 5, and line 7 here, and then 2, 4, 6, alternating between the like, a, or is, as. And obviously, if you're writing about a male or female, you delete the he or she accordingly so that it works for your poem. So that's your activity today. So it's pretty simple, straightforward. We're writing a pure simile poem where every line does include a simile just because that's really our focus and we're really practicing on that today. And then hopefully in weeks down the line, when you have a bit more free choice just to go for it and write about whatever you want, it will be up to you to choose which poetic devices you use. So you might decide that you find it really easy using similes, or perhaps later on you might decide to use something different, perhaps personification or metaphors. So basically, we're going to be focusing on each poetic device in detail, practicing each one. You can decide which one you prefer to use, and the one that might create images the best that you think. And then later on, when you have that free choice, you can then go back and mix them all up and create a poem that includes all of them. But for today, our sole focus is on similes. So in your classwork, you will find your working document. There are a couple of little warm-up activities in there where you have to do some highlighting of the similes first. So you have to think about what I did when I highlighted the poems and the examples I've just shared with you here. And you have to do some highlighting of your own before you then launch into writing your own simile poem. Okay, we're looking forward to seeing what you come up with.